Dominic, there's a lot happening in the retail industry or people leasing itself, and landlords overpowering the tenants. Is that correct? And,
yeah, look, certainly.
And you need to make a decision on what you're going to be doing with your business and lease. So, please.
Yeah, look, certainly my topic probably doesn't fit perfectly into the whole decision-making area that we're discussing, save that I might say that if a lot of you are running your own businesses, sole proprietors, then most of you are likely to be tenants rather than landlords, unless, of course, you've got your own properties elsewhere. So in terms of making decisions, if anything, I'd probably be saying, look, delay at the moment, because the commercial rental market just seems to be, still getting worse at the moment. Through the start of the 2000s, the vacancy rates were pretty tight in Perth, and so landlords had quite a bit of power. It used to be the case that the landlord's lawyer would draft the lease. This is for, just thinking specifically now, for retail shop leases, and the poor old tenant would have to pay it. That's changed now. Everyone's meant to be bearing their own costs. So in the retail shop sector, there's been a bit of change to try and give a bit more equilibrium there between landlord and tenant. But just generally across the space, tenants are now finding themselves with a lot more power than they have done. I think Perth vacancy rates at the moment are above 10%. The suggestion is they'll hit about 15% by mid-2015. And a lot of that is because in Perth our tenancy rates are driven a lot by engineering, construction and the resources sector. And those areas are in trouble at the moment. Also, as there's a change in the cycle now from construction to production in industry, and also there's a lot of new tenancies coming online. I think they're expecting about another 166,000 square metres or something by December 2015. Now, it's more than half of that is already pre-committed, but maybe 40-45% of it isn't. Which creates a glut in the market, and then also the people that are already pre-committed, well, they won't be taking space somewhere else. So things have really turned now, and you'll have been seeing a lot more for lease signs up. And what that means for you as a tenant coming in is that you've got a lot more power. If you can delay entering into a lease you're thinking about at the moment, that might be a good idea. But it also sort of touches back on a number of things which I'll sort of circle back to later. But once you do commit yourself to a lease, one of the things to keep in mind is it'll often be managed by a managing agent for the landlord. Keep an eye on them, because they often get it wrong. I normally get involved, I'm a disputes lawyer, so I just get involved at the dispute end of things. Usually I'll be acting for a landlord suing a tenant, and so I've got to go through and do the figures, and I'm like, where the hell did you get this interest rate from? It doesn't match up with what's actually in the lease, and it's just like, oh, that's just the interest rate that we use, or whatever. All sorts of stuff. Often they'll be calculating variable outgoings incorrectly. If it's a retail shop lease, then they might be required to give annual estimates of variable outgoings, and they just haven't bothered doing it. So these sorts of things can create problems. If I'm acting for a tenant, the first thing I'll look at is, well, what are your actual obligations under the lease? And often you'll find things, and particularly things with variable outgoings, that they're being incorrectly charged and so on, and interest rates are wrong, and those sorts of things, which creates an avenue for you to then protect your position. And what we're finding now in the weaker market is that's empowering tenants. So tenants are not panicking so much that they're going to get booted by the landlord and they're not going to be able to find another premises, or that they're under the landlord's control. They're sort of thinking, well, look, bugger this. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'll probably get a better, a lower rent rate somewhere else. So we're finding tenants push back a lot more, which is something that landlords need to keep in mind. If you're coming from a landlord's perspective, is that you have to think about dotting your I's, crossing your T's, that you're doing the right thing, so there's less wiggle room for your tenants to sneak out once a dispute arises. If you've been doing the wrong thing over the course of the lease, well, then it's just going to create some problems for you and make it harder for you to hold on to that tenant and stop them from leaving. From the tenant's perspective, what we're seeing a lot more of at the moment is tenants terminating leases for defaults. seriously fighting back when there's an allegation of a default by a landlord. So the landlord might pursue a claim for unpaid rent. The tenants are now starting to turn around, which they didn't used to do so much, and actually going through and crunching all the numbers and say, well, hang on, you've been charging me the wrong rent for the last 3 years and I've got a claim against you, or it's because you've been putting undue pressure on me because of the wrong rents, that's why I haven't been able to pay you, these sorts of things. We're also finding that landlords are not necessarily wanting to take action against their tenants at the moment, so that's something that you guys can use in your favour. The reason why landlords aren't wanting to take action is because they don't want to terminate the lease and then try and find someone else. They're trying to hold on to the tenants that they've got. So again, if you're coming from a tenant's perspective, that's something in your favour. Probably what I should do, so I did say to Zishan that I wouldn't talk so much today as I normally talk, but invariably I will keep talking, so perhaps what I will do is I'll stop there, and if anyone wants to talk about anything, please ask me a question, and then that gives me my legitimate excuse to keep talking.